So my name's David Guest. I'm a solution architect, technology evangelist. I talk a lot. I'm going to take you through Defender for Cloud in about 30 minutes. That means I'm basically going to skim it. If we really did Defender for Cloud in depth, we will still be here on Friday, the 13th of June, 2025. Okay, maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration. We're all in the position of knowing that we have to protect our assets. And we're also in the position of making sure that our assets are in the right place. So Microsoft and Kocho understand that you will not put all of your assets into Azure. You may have things that work better in AWS. You may already have an environment that includes GCP. You may already have the Oracle Cloud sitting, doing whatever it does for you. You need to be aware of how we're going to manage that. And one of the things that Paul was talking about was Entra and permissions management. Permissions management will allow you to have a look at Azure, GCP, and Amazon today and see what your admins can do, can't do, and what they haven't been doing, which is actually the important bit. Oracle is coming. Defender for Cloud needs to tell you the same thing in terms of your security posture. Yes, it's built into Azure. You'd expect that. But it also uses the standard APIs available from both AWS and Google to get the same level of information from those environments to tell you that your system is still secure. Now, using those standard APIs is quite important because it means this is a standard environment. We're making available to you details that you should be able to see. We're not trying to do anything funny. We're not opening up the bonnet and taking out a spark plug and looking at it closely in a really strange way. We're actually doing it using the standards. The aim is to give you the best possible view of all of your environments in that one clear console. So how many people have heard somebody from Microsoft say, single pane of glass?
I didn't say that.
No. I'm trying to avoid the word zero trust in this as well. So we know that single pane of glass is a panacea. It would be brilliant to only go to one portal and see everything. Is it ever going to really happen? Probably not. Unless, of course, you write something yourself that goes off using API calls and finds the information for everyone, brings it together for you. But then when you're drilling into it, you're going to see different things. But if we can do as much as possible in one place, that's worthwhile. And actually, we can give you pretty much a single pane of glass. But it's not this one. Another of the things that Paul was talking about was Sentinel. If we take all of the information we've got from Defender for Cloud across all its environments, and we take that information, we put it into Sentinel, and we write some really, really nice KQL, well, we have a single pane of glass. Our Sentinel interface is now giving us everything we need. And there's a very important woman at the back who'll be able to talk to you about that a lot later on. Anna? Yes? And it shouldn't really matter which role you have in the organization, whether you're the CISO or the security analyst or the guy who's actually trying to figure out why your Windows 11 device just will not sign in. You should all be able to use that same interface, that same set of information in order to learn and do what you have to do. As you can tell from the lack of hair, we have a similar longevity within the business. And back in the day, we used to talk about the help desk. And the help desk became the service desk. And the service desk became something else. And these days, everything is DevOps. DevOps is one of those new buzzwords that seems to be there. But we need to make sure that our DevOps are managed and secure. It's absolutely pointless putting this wonderful system together and then just leaving the door open and letting people stroll in. So we need to make sure that we've got that visibility of the DevOps environment. What's in there? Anybody here use code to create their infrastructure? We actually do it quite a lot as Kocho for our managed service clients. How many of us actually validate that code properly before we put it into life? How many of us make sure that all of those little tweaks and whistles and bells that we have to put in place are actually locked down properly? It's very important to make sure that you do that, and this will do it for you. So Defender for Cloud can monitor your code that you've got in DevOps or GitHub or wherever you actually have it. Well, okay, there's only really 2 channels working, but it's a start. And then we automate it. Oh, hang on a minute, sir. You look like you've left a port open on this NSG. We think you ought to close it unless there's a good reason why you need it open. That automated discovery of your environment is quite key. Anybody here have an OT as well as an IT network? Okay, there's a couple of us around. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to have a look at your OT network without having to install a server on it and actually just have some information about what's going around that network? Agentless discovery is here, and it's part of this. So we can actually see what's going on in a network, even if it hasn't got a server on it anymore. I mean, that's quite neat, to be honest. I think it's really cool. We can then assess that network and make sure that it is doing what it's supposed to be doing. It is protected. There is some strange traffic flowing around it. Should that be there? Well, possibly not. So let's go and find out. Where's it coming from? Where's it going to? We need to make sure our configuration is as strong as it can be. What's the point in making sure you've got all of the right firewalls in place? Nobody can get onto your VLAN at all unless they've got the right ID, and then we put a server on there with a direct connection to the internet, and it's got OpenDNS, or it's got DHCP that's badly configured, or the administrator password is left as the default. Anybody know what the default administrator password is? Oh, well, that's a good question. There isn't one. You have to set it yourself manually, which is good, because if there was a default password, so many people would be hacked. We need to make sure that anything we code, anything we're writing, is kept as secure as possible. And this is even more important when we start talking about DevOps. The DevOps, the developers, are now operational. They need to be thinking security before they put pen to paper. Okay, fingers to keyboard. We need to make sure that whatever they're doing, they think security first. This will help. Okay, it might not start them with security first, but it'll definitely make sure they're thinking of security at the end. So we have the idea of the security posture. And Tom's going to be talking about the security posture assessment that we do later on. But from a DevOps point of view, this is absolutely key. It's going to give you information about managing your DevOps environment and keeping it secure. It's going to make sure that your code is practical and secure at the inception, before you actually release it into the wild. It will check how that's going to fit into your cloud environments as far as possible. Obviously, there's a lot of cloud environments out there that have their own APIs, and we're not just talking AWS and Google and Oracle. Salesforce is probably the 3rd largest single platform for running applications in. It's not on this list yet. Might be. Don't ask me when, but it would be daft not to add it on. And that security posture, that control, that front that you have, needs to be secure, and you need to manage it. We need to make sure that you can see it. Okay, secure score. Everybody remember when that first came out? And we all thought it was absolutely brilliant, and a score of 16 out of whatever the number was, oh yeah, it's not really good. Interestingly, the average secure score across the Azure tenants is less than 16. And the number goes up to 700 and something, so it's really bad. But that does include all the demo tenants, the test tenants, the application development tenants that somebody spun up for no apparent reason, just because they could. It's not necessarily the corporate tenants. If you're going to measure yourself against something, please use the corporate tenant version, where the secure score is much higher. But the nice thing about the secure score, and the thing that really brings it to life, is I can put that in front of a CISO who's only just taken on the job because somebody had to and nobody else was willing to, and it'll make sense to them. Our score's 39% out of, well, it's a percentage. I know what that is. We need to improve that. That needs to be better. How do we do it? Oh, well, I can drill down and see what's going on. How do we actually make that happen? Well, that's fine. We'll ask our partner, Kocho, to actually engage with us and go through that. This is such a great way of doing things, and it's so much different from the way that was first released. But Secure Score has now spread its wings as well. It's also not just looking at security, it's looking at your identity security, your application security, your data management, data loss prevention, you name it, there's a Secure Score that deals with it. Not quite, there's an app for that, but we're getting there. But your endpoints mustn't be forgotten about, and we have a lot of them. So quite a lot of us have got, don't take out the microphone, one of these, yeah? Or two of these, or three of these. I have seen somebody walking around with 5 phones. Still don't understand why.
Drug dealer.
Yeah. Laptops. So I sit at home in my office, and I've been based from home for a long time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 laptops in front of me on, powered on. Okay, only 3 of them are Kocho, the other 2 are client-based, but it's something I need to manage. And those endpoints are in my home, and there are children wandering around in my home. They're not mine, they're my grandchildren. Have you ever seen how much damage a 3-year-old can do to your keyboard? And all it takes is for that 1 in 1 million chance of them typing in a password correctly, and you could end up in a mess. Everybody knows the story of the infinite number of monkeys who give them an infinite number of typewriters, will type to be or not to be. That is the Gazornenplatz. Okay, it didn't quite work. But the chances are they will eventually get a password. So those endpoint devices are actually quite critical. We need to make sure that we're managing them properly. And an endpoint includes a server and a firewall and a router, because they're all endpoints. They're all things you can attach to. Now, Defender for endpoint doesn't cover everything you'll have, but it covers a lot of it. Servers, workstations, Mac, iOS, Android, Linux. Microsoft do Linux. Really? Okay. So we need to make sure that that's there and controllable. We need to make sure that we understand the risk that's going on based on these things. It's all very well saying, oh, this user's got a problem, they can't sign in. I've decided that they are a high-risk user. No. Why? What made them high risk? One of the primary things with high risk is transport. Okay, what do I mean by that? I do not mean we're using IP or TCP or UDP to transport information from A to B. What I mean is, I have walked across the road. Huh? Okay, true story. I have a client. They're in London. They're in the city. So I arranged to meet them. I'm going on site, I'll be there at about 10 o'clock. I got an early train down from Cheshire. I'm in London. It's 9 o'clock. I'm thinking, oh, okay, I need a coffee. I had to get up very early, so I dive into Starbucks, get my laptop out, sign into the Starbucks network. Okay, all good, sign in, check my emails, put my out of office on because I'm in a meeting, close down the laptop, put it away, drink the coffee, go across the road, into the bank. Can I have your Wi-Fi code? Because I need to just, yeah, of course you can. Here's the Wi-Fi code. Okay, sign in, go online. Oh, high-risk user, block. What? I've just walked across the road. Ah, yeah, but what I didn't realise was the ISP for the bank is in Holland. I've just done impossible transport. Now, is that real or not? Well, to IT, it looks real. That's why this context is important. It's actually quite normal for somebody going to that client to suddenly appear in Holland. And we work with that client a lot. So actually, that's a false positive. The context starts to become important. The user behavior of either the device or the user, and I'm classing a device here as being a user, is important. So we need to understand all of that and make sure that we work our way through it intelligently. And of course, using AI or ML, we can start to see these patterns appear and make sure that we're taking them in the right way. And we need to do it across how many servers, how many services, how many clouds. So this all has to be scalable. We have to be able to take the information that we're seeing, react to it in an appropriate manner and in a timely manner. And that's just something that 10 years ago nobody would have thought we could or needed to do. So these things are changing and changing rapidly. And then we've got, and I'll be talking about this later on as well, all of these weird letters that we need to worry about. PCI, ICO, ISO, HIPAA, Sarbanes-Oxley. Fortunately, we don't have much of that in the UK. Maybe. GDPR. Anybody know the major difference between PCI 3.2 and 4 and 4.0A? When did that come out? It's useful things like PCI 3.2, you must expire your passwords every 90 days. We don't like doing that anymore, do we? Because NCSC, NIST and the government say you should never expire a password. But PCI says you have to, if it's 3.2. 4, no, you don't have to have your password changed, but you have to have a second method of authentication, such as an authenticator app or an MFA or a FIDO or Windows Hello for Business or something. And a lot of times these regulations are behind the times. They're probably written 3 years ago. Anybody here with the police? Phew, I'm safe to say this. The police have an organisation who actually say how they should work in the cloud. They only stopped using ADFS 2 years ago. I'm allowed to say that because it's true. Purview is really key to this. It's all very well saying that we're going to protect things and having really good security. What is it we're protecting? What was the Tower of London built to protect? Anyone? It wasn't. It was actually built as a prison. It was to protect the inmates. No, it was to make sure the inmates couldn't get out and cause trouble. It ended up with the Tower of London protecting the crown jewels. But actually, the purpose of the Tower of London is not to stop people stealing the crown jewels. The purpose of the Tower of London today is to raise a lot of money and allow people to see the crown jewels. That's what security is. And we need to think about it because those resources, crown jewels, how the hell did they get onto that? Data is what we're talking about. Data are your crown jewels. It is your systems, your data that you need to protect. Do you know where that data is? Do you know what that data is? Do you know where that data is going? Now, most people will have to say no to most of those questions. Purview, DLP, Microsoft Purview Information Protection, I'm sure there's going to come up with a better solution than MPIP. All of these things are allowed to see what your data is. Purview has the ability to do this for structured and unstructured data. MPIP looks at unstructured data, Word, Excel, PowerPoint. And as Paul was saying earlier, we can now do this contextually. Oh, hang on a minute. you've started to download a lot of files that are booked as internal. Because you've downloaded so many, I'm going to MFA you now. The context is what you're doing, not just the data. And it's very important to manage that. When data goes missing, most times it doesn't end up in the press. Now here I'm talking about data that's gone missing, not a breach. When it does end up in the press, it's a big story. Anybody here follow Formula One? Yeah? Anybody know about the McLaren dossier? Yes, that's data. Intellectual property that somebody took away and gave to somebody else. Well, wouldn't it be nice if that could have been stopped at source? And this is how we do it. So we need to make sure that all of this is protected in the right way, that we can see what is and isn't being protected. So, threat detection across the whole estate using Defender for Endpoint. Examine that using the MITRE framework, because the MITRE framework is probably the best thing out there today. Use the threat intelligence that we get from, well, working with lots of people and having the single largest database of all provisioning, authentication, authorization and attacks in the world, all coming together in one place. Understand what our networks look like without having to install something on them. Agentless has to be the way to go, because otherwise there's something else you've got to manage, something else you've got to secure, and all of the pain that goes with that. Alert correlation. Yeah, that's really good. I've seen something happen over here and it is related to something over there, isn't it? Well, I don't know. But by using Sentinel, by understanding where things are and where they come from, we can actually get that together and see a real picture. One of the other examples of this I do actually says alert correlation is the important piece, because it's the bit that glues it all together, that makes it look like, oh no, this is one concerted attack, not 5 disparate events that actually have no link to each other at all. Make sure that what you're doing is sensible, and make sure you protect it wherever it is. Anybody here still have on-premises data centers or data centers that aren't in Azure or AWS or Oracle? Yeah, we've all got servers probably sitting underneath someone's desk or in a cupboard in the office. Well, let's add them to this. Let's automatically deploy using something like Azure Arc. Deploy the Defender for Endpoint onto those devices so that they get monitored and managed as well. So it doesn't matter where that device is, it's still part of our ecosystem, it's still being managed appropriately. When we see an incident, we need to make sure that we act appropriately. And this is again where things like Sentinel come in, where log analytics comes in. Being able to see, actually, what's happening here has happened to other people before. There is a Sentinel workbook for that. I can download it. It takes me about 4 minutes and I can immediately apply it, and we'll be much more secure. Because people in the ecosystem of Sentinel, like ourselves, publish the workbooks as we come across something new. Okay, Microsoft publish a lot more than we do, but they see a lot more than we do. But every single Sentinel partner has that ability. So we can make things available to you much more simply. So Defender for Cloud gives us this cross-cloud, platform agnostic system for managing our compute, workstations, servers, the service layers that we've got going on, the API use from other areas to actually pull that together. We can look at databases, we can look at the management of a Cosmos DB sitting in somebody else's cloud somewhere and actually say, yeah, this is in a good state or not. looking at AWS workloads and GCP workloads, things that you've got in, it's in somebody else's cloud. How can you manage that? Well, it's simple. We're allowed to. So it makes it easy. And also do your on-premises. On-premises being a virtual term, because it really means in a data center somewhere that isn't GCP or AWS or Azure. All good? Excellent. Okay, that's what we're talking about managing. That's a lot of services. There's a lot of things there that we are going to get to grips with over time. If there's things that you think are missing from that, please tell us. I'm happy to listen and I'll feed on to Paul. Paul is very happy to listen. Buy him a beer sometime and he'll tell you all about the rugby as well. Oh, sorry, shouldn't have mentioned the rugby. And make sure that everything you're doing here works inside the operation. We all know the story, don't we? We got this brand new system, absolutely superb. It's going to save everybody 3 days' time per month. If only they'd start using it. We forgot to tell them. We forgot to operationalize it. We have to make sure that these things are actually part of it. I think one of the key things here is, as we're doing this, that second line. This is using standard APIs made available by the cloud providers to manage their workloads. This is not a case of signing in with a Google managed service account that happens to be an admin and therefore gives us the capability. No, this is using a proper API with a proper managed service and actually pulling that information out. And when you start to apply that along with all of the other pieces that join it together, it makes it so much more powerful. There you are, rolling it out. Using Azure Arc to push this out to as many servers, as many locations as you possibly can. Using your single control plane, the resource manager. Okay, this brings us back to DevOps because that's who's controlling that, and making sure the whole thing works. Now, I've forgotten about that slide. The bits that glue it all together. There is no reason why you have to use Azure workflows as part of Defender for Cloud. It is not compulsory. If you prefer Slack or you prefer ServiceNow, that is fine. We will kick off a Slack process or a ServiceNow ticket, a workflow inside something else from Azure using a Logic app. Logic app detects it, you then manage it somewhere else. Absolutely fine. It's your workflow. You put it where you want it. That's actually great in terms of support.